Guys, congratulations. The ending for your current arc for Star Trek was incredible. Absolutely nailed the ending. Omega was the perfect epilogue, but the lore war, everything came together so beautifully, and I'm thrilled that we get to start off our conversation about that.
It was such a joy, man. I think when we all started this back a few years ago, I don't think we ever could have imagined having been on the other side of it. Like, I think it combined something like 70 issues of comics between Defiant and us and Sons, between 2 ongoing events, 2 insane books by Ryan North that were somehow better than everything we did, even though they were just jokes. I don't know, like, I really think we look back at it as a bit of a miracle on our side. I can't quite believe it happened. It was really such a joy.
Well, and to bring Omega to life, I know when we first talked to Heather Antos, the editor on the line, we were like, well, what if just everyone draws a little bit of it? And she was like, I love that idea. I hate that you just put it into my head. That sounds like an editorial nightmare. And we said, well, then thank God we have such a great editor. So being able to bring everyone in for that final issue just felt so special as like a closing statement from every artist, every creator who's really touched on the property. It was a labor of love from top to bottom, from first issue to last. And it was just being able to close it like that with kind of a quiet issue about emotions and about coming home, about engaging with the people you love, was just so powerful.
And I think giving everyone a chance to shine as you put an end to this era. Obviously we have a lot to talk about today, but I think that you really were able to tie everything together so nicely with a bow, and it wasn't just that forced ending, but it really a chance to breathe in an organic way.
It's the kind of thing you don't get a lot in comic books. It is the thing you hope for, right? Which is to tell your story until you're done. And that is a very hard thing to do in today's market, where books last 4 or 5 issues and then they're gone. Maybe they last for 10 or 11 and then they're gone. Getting to do a thing that lasts this long, that let us take the detours we wanted to take. I think like Defiant is a really good example of this, of just being able to take whatever detour you wanted out of that play, and getting to do like that Parasite arc, or getting to do the Romulan Uprising arc. Like there's so many moves along the way. When the Walls Fell, our second to last arc, where we got to just be like, hey, we want to go to Fluidic Space for an issue. Hey, we want to go to the JJ verse for an issue. Hey, we want to go to we want to do 2 issues of Tess Fowler painted Bajor lore. Like, insane that we got to do each of these things and take that time through it. So getting to the end and being like, yeah, let's give it a proper denouement. Let's at least take that time to say, we're going to go step by step through these characters and make sure that you have fundamental closure with each and every one of them. It felt like the only thing we could do, right? And by that point, you're like, well, we've taken the time on everything else. Why wouldn't we take the time to put these characters back where they belong and set up Picard and and Nemesis and where all these characters are going next?
And I loved that there were so many great moments in that last book, having Jake be the narrator, getting his book, having the book really sort of frame the epilogue was a beautiful touch.
It's one of those things where it's like you get into this because you love creating Star Trek, and then when we get to that point and you get to write this seminal moment that always should have been there, like just talking about it, having you bring it up, like I'm once again getting chills. Like it is so important. The thesis statement of the book, the thing we wanted to do was resolve Ben and Jake. It is so important for him to stand up and love his son and make sure that Jake isn't left alone. That just bringing that closure, getting to write a little bit of his famous book was just really important and really great.
Yeah, Anselm is one of those wild things that it's a big dangling thread in Star Trek, and it's something where as we got closer to it, we sort of discovered that we weren't the only people at Star Trek who thought so, and so it was a really lovely thing to discover that sort of everybody at Star Trek had been waiting for this moment and looking for a way to return to Anselm and find a way to make it really matter. And so this was a really beautiful way to get to do that.
Our ComicsOnline team was talking before the interviews, and we all agreed the one thing that I think has been the best gift of your collective runs has been the opportunity to give some closure to different story arcs that really needed a little bit more love. Getting a little bit more with Rolaren, getting more with Jake, of course, we've already talked about. Even just Scotty getting some moments was beautiful. Wesley's story and Beverly. So all of these pieces I felt like have really complemented the voices and the narrative that you all have crafted with us. And Chris, we've talked to these guys a lot. we haven't had a chance to talk in person, but more so, we've absolutely loved everything you guys have done with this run, and we couldn't be more excited to see what comes next.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, like I think that those characters you mentioned, like specifically Ro, or even somebody like Worf, right? I think when you look at what they were doing in Picard, right, and when those characters come back, all of a sudden, everything that happened in Deep Space Nine and Next Gen becomes the first act, and then Picard is their third act. So we got to fill in those pieces where the last time you see Ro in Next Gen, she's Will Riker's letting her go, right? And she's defecting. And so then when we pick her up in Picard, she's a senior intelligence officer. And so how do you take someone like that who is so disillusioned and disenchanted with Starfleet and bring them back into the fold, right? And so that, and then have and start to craft that relationship between her and Worf that will switch in Picard, right? Where he's working for her. So it was just fun to build those dynamics out and tell those stories. Yeah.
That moment in particular, I think, was a really great beat for Omega. But I also loved Picard coming in and putting his foot down with Worf and just saying, no, this is not happening.
I love that he goes like, all right, so either Nechayev or...
yeah, he burns one of them.
Yeah, he's like, do you know which admiral he burns?
Well, it's because Jellicoe is still in Prodigy.
Right, so it's got to be Nechayev.
It's like the assumption is, and this is why it's all fun, because it's connected. It's like, we know Jellicoe lives on and is fine in his legacy, so Nechayev clearly took the fall for everything that happened in Defiant, which is fun, and I think that's worthy of her.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, before we get to the distant future, let's go back to the past a little bit. We've got Star Trek Red Shirts. First issue is already out. Phenomenal launch issue. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Why was it important to go explore this corner of the Trek universe for your next Star Trek story?
Well, I'll speak from a personal place first, which is I love the original series. Like, that's what I watched the 10 best episodes on the 25th anniversary on the Paramount Network, the summer of 1991. I was switching schools, and so I was really lost. I didn't have any new friends in this place. So I just, those Technicolor uniforms and those characters, I just gravitated towards. And so I really wanted to play in that universe in some way. And this just struck me. It was funny. It was as I was on strike during the WGA strike, and we were all marching around Disney, and you're feeling very expendable and forgotten. And I was like, man, there's a Star Trek story in here somewhere about the people who feel the same way as a screenwriter feels like right now.
Dude, I was walking around Disney when he was feeling that way. I feel like I was watching this happen.
Red Shirts right now, and it was funny. So I started texting Heather, and then once everything was resolved, and she was like, and she simultaneously had wanted to do this book since the beginning. She was like, I know I have to earn Paramount's trust first, but she has been obsessed with Red Shirts, and so she and I just started talking about it. And then once everything was resolved, we started crafting it, and it was one of those things where I wanted to tell a story that was about the boots on the ground in Starfleet, the unsung heroes, the unsung of the unsung, if you will. And those deaths are hilarious in the show, but in our book, what's fun is we'll get some of those, and some of them I think will be classic in that way, but then we'll also get to know these people, right? And that's what Star Trek does so well, is we will start to fall in love with these red shirt characters, and so when they bite the big one and kick the bucket, it's gonna be a bit of a bummer. So we'll get to play with people's feelings as they're reading it.
I loved that these characters feel so personable in just that first issue alone. Obviously, don't get too attached with a title like Red Shirts, but I liked how quickly you were able to lean in to establishing who they are, what they're going to be dealing with, and setting the stage to make it feel pretty epic right off the bat.
Yeah, that was the idea. And we have 12 characters because we wanted, we knew we were going to burn through some people, and so we built a crew roster, and that was always the idea, to have a crew roster in that book that would help you get to just a little flavor for them, and then just those key moments, where they introduce each other. And there are 2 red shirts who are over the age of 40, and they're legendary because they're still alive, right? Like that's just a part of the mythos, and so the group and the cast gets to be young, and they get to be a little fresh-faced. Even if they've been through the Klingon War, they've been through some of these things, like they're new to this, and they're experiencing maybe the worst part of Starfleet, right away. And so they have that mission of hope. They're believers, but at the same time, there's going to be like a big cost. Yeah.
Chris, is there a non-spoilery favorite death that you can share?
Oh boy.
All of them.
There's a death in There's a death in issue 2 where there's a simultaneous thing happens to someone that are two kind of hallmarks ways to die in Star Trek happening at once to someone, and it's quite graphic and great.
The vanilla and
Yes,
and
and
chocolate.
it's
Nice.
I think it'll be shocking for people because of where this character is in the story, but then also I think it'll be pretty funny still because we're early in and they deal with it in a quite humorous way in terms of their own death.
I love it, man.
Yeah, it should be good.
I want to just shout out the torpedo tubes bit in the first issue. It just lives rent free in my head now. I just think it's the coolest use of that technology and the hope that it provides the reader until the last minute. Like I just think it's a great sequence.
And it's also, I feel like it's such a thing. I mean, so it's a little bit of a spoiler is that the way that the Red Shirts crew gets to this planet is they're fired down to the surface in torpedo tubes, and that literally came from a really poignant moment in Wrath of Khan, which is they put Spock's body out and they shoot into space. And I feel like there was one bureaucratic guy in Starfleet in the back who was like, you know what? I got an idea. And I feel like that they use that later. So it's like I feel like that just them doing that, and like Paramount was very funny about that. They're like, we should mention that it's pressure controlled and there's atmosphere in there, so they don't feel like horribly cruel in terms of what they're shooting them down.
That is a coffin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's already written in terms of their fate, what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, and we have to now jump to the future. The Last Starship, I had the pleasure of reading that last night. We are not going to spoil any key moments, as has been requested by IDW.
Yeah, we're
Greg, I'm very aware.
These talky boys are talking very little about the Last Starship.
I will say, I really loved this first issue. Both of these ones in particular, I feel are such strong entries into a new point in the Star Trek mythos. I'm just curious as to how this book evolved for you guys. Where did it come from as far as the inspiration, the idea? What can you share?
So for the last couple of years, obviously, we've been doing the most fan-forward version of a Star Trek comic, a version that takes all your favorite characters and every little side plot and every little thing that you've ever heard of and every series and draws them all together into a big melting pot so that if you love any part of Star Trek, there's something for you there. Last Starship came from kind of a thought experiment, which was, what if we did a book where it had none of the things you love about Star Trek? What if you did a book that was, but it was still Star Trek as fuck, to save my
emotionally.
like it was
That's going on the cover.
like where what you do. Well, I mean, credit to Scott Snyder. I'm stealing that from him. We thought about it as absolute Star Trek. How do you take a book that has starships, it has teleportation, it has phasers, it has uniforms, it has Klingons, it has all these characters, it has James T. Kirk, it has all these things that people know about. If you just threw a rock at somebody, you're like, hey, what do you know about Star Trek? They know that. And then everything else is new. It's here for you, and it's a new context. It's 700 years past what most people know. It is during a period of time where Star Trek is burning, right? By page 10, we are dealing with a Federation that is fundamentally changed by a huge event that is going to tear the history of Star Trek apart. And then the story is about how a bunch of new characters who you are going to meet for the first time hold that Federation spirit in their heart and try to hold that hope through a very, very dark period in Star Trek history. And we thought, if we can do that, if we can give a Star Trek book to somebody who's never read a Star Trek book and make them fall in love with this because it feels like the world outside their window, because it feels relevant, it feels like a story they want to hear, then we'll have done, I think, for us, the final frontier of Star Trek books, which is, can we do a book that isn't just for the fans, but is for all comics readers?
And I think, Star Trek is always at its best when it is a social commentary, right? Like, from the very start, it's looking at the world around them and then translating it to a science fiction setting, but it's always about the people outside your door. And right now, we live in a very interesting time when we need to be dealing with things that we thought would last forever are cracking at the seams. And that's a story very much that we see everywhere, and we wanted to tell a Star Trek story that was really relevant to how people feel, while at the same time giving them some of the coolest action, great explosions, great starships, and all the stuff they really come to crave just as a science fiction fan.
Now, I'm curious, obviously you guys have worked very closely together in the last few years.
Yeah.
Are you still jumping off of each other from a writer's room perspective, treating it more like a TV writer's room and just sort of putting all the pieces out there and still having a little bit of collaboration, or are you really now doing completely separate things?
I feel like we've transitioned from hey, we're all writing in a writer's room to hey, we're all friends. So
It's the best way to transition.
yeah. So
We're not in the room creating together, but Chris is sending us all of his stuff, not because we need to read it, but because we want to read it.
yeah, we meet. We all live in the same city, so we just meet and have a drink and eat food and talk about Star Trek. We talk about what's going on in our lives. We talk about what we're inspired by. Like it's not, hey, how can we plot this perfect Star Trek book now? Chris doesn't need us, and we don't need Chris for this. What we need is to know that there's other people on Star Trek who are similarly aligned, kicking ass and doing great stuff that inspires us.
The moment that I found out that there was an advanced copy of Last Starship to read, because I'd already read the script and I'd seen some of the art, right? So I just said, I'm like, I need to see that, right? And then I read that. I was like, I need to read the issue now, like, and I read it immediately just because I love what these guys do with one of my favorite things. So it's still that, you know what I mean? And I think, like, I'm sure you guys will bring stuff in from Flagship and what we've built before, and that's what's nice. And Defiant is connected to Red Shirts as well, but like, we're also 700 years apart or 800 years apart.
Exactly.
So now we're that way, but it's we can still wave at each other.
We might be apart in time, but
Yes.
we're together in our hearts.
We have a friendship wormhole.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Boom.
There's
that
the
one was
story
for free.
engine.
I
That's
feel
nice.
like we have to end on that note. But
The
guys,
friendship wormhole.
both of these are damn good books.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
really can't stress enough how much I enjoyed reading both of them for completely different reasons.
Thank
and
you.
I think that making the Star Trek universe even more accessible is how these characters get to continue, the stories get to continue. But you guys are doing such justice to the characters we already know and setting the stage for new ones to be explored. I mean, that's part of the journey. I know with creating anything, but really, thank you for all you do, and congratulations in advance for these books and their success.
No, thanks, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
We got more coming to you from Comics Online at San Diego Comic-Con 2025.